Programming Coordinator for the Kitsap Regional Library. And I'd like to welcome all of you here tonight. Thank you very much for coming out on this, one of the nicer evenings we've had this summer, and it may be the only nice evening we have, so you may be sacrificing more than you think. This is the first in a quarterly series of community conversations that is being co-sponsored by the Kitsap Regional Library and the Kitsap Sun. So, and it's going to be pretty low tech, so you can all turn off your cell phones. We're not going to be twittering or blogging or emailing or anything else. It's going to be just kind of an old-fashioned conversation, which would be, I can think, kind of refreshing. I'd also like to mention that on all of your chairs there is an evaluation form, which we would appreciate your completing before you leave and turning it in at the table in the back, because that'll give us an idea of how you like the forum and how you found out about it. And there's also a space at the bottom under number 5 where you can put down your ideas for either future Kitsap Regional Library programs or topics for this seminar. And the next one will probably be in either September or October, and we're looking for topics that are of interest to everyone on Kitsap County. I'd like to thank the Kitsap Sun for approaching Kitsap Regional Library with this great, wonderful idea. Also, the WSU Kitsap County Extension, who are our hosts in order to get us permission to use this room, and Bainbridge Access, Bainbridge Community, BCAT is what is the acronym, and I can never remember the full name. And they are videotaping this tonight for replay on their channels, Channel 3 and Channel 12. And it will also be available, I believe, through the Kitsap Sun and the Kitsap Regional Library web pages. So you can let people know that weren't able to see it tonight, that they can watch it later. And there's a schedule on the bottom of your program. So just so you know, you are being videotaped, more than likely. So if you don't want to be videotaped, then now's the time to leave before 7:30. And also, there are some note cards on your chair with a pencil. So if you, we're hoping that you'll just ask questions, because we do want this to be a conversation. But if you're a little shy and you would just like to write your question on a card, you can go ahead and do that, and I'll be sort of circulating in the room and picking those up. And now I'd like to introduce David Nelson. He's the editor of the Kitsap Sun, and he is the moderator for today's conversation. And I was just about to walk off with his notes.
Thanks, Kathleen. And thanks, everyone here, for showing up tonight. The one other organization we wanted to mention was the Kitsap Agricultural and Community Alliance, and they have a sign-up sheet that Kathleen is going to pass around, and Jim Freeman has asked that everyone sign in so they can have an accurate count of who was here for their monthly meeting. How we're going to run the forum is we're going to allow each of our panelists about 5 minutes to introduce themselves and what their interest is in the issue of local food and local farming and food production. After each of them gets a chance to talk, I'd like to allow the questions from the audience to start rather than finish the evening. I have a list of questions I can ask if people get shy, but I think we'd prefer it if you guys ask what you want of this group, and we let the spirit lead on the discussion, as it were. Like Kathleen said, she will have a microphone and be walking around the audience, so once we get finished with the first round, if you have a question, just raise your hand, and she'll come over your way. Our panelists, if you've read Sun for the last couple days, you read their columns, are Arno Bergstrom from WSU Extension, Jim Freeman from the Ag Alliance, Sally Maron from Sound Food, and I mispronounced it. Okay. Alex Moore from Cascade Harvest, Charlotte Garrido from Kitsap County, and Nikki Johansson, who's a local farmer. And I'm going to let Arno begin.
Yes, thank you very much for this opportunity to be here. As he indicated, I'm with Arno Bergstrom with Washington State University, and I've been in Kitsap County working on ag and natural resources education programs for the last 10 years, actually this month. And I grew up on a small farm in the Midwest in southern Minnesota, And it wasn't until I left and was gone for a number of years, way beyond my college years, that I really realized, you know, what I lost or what I left behind, which was what I call a high quality of life or a lifestyle for farming. When I arrived here in Kitsap County 10 years ago, I had the assignment to work with farmers in the county, and there wasn't, didn't know who they were, and there weren't any records in my office. So I really needed to kind of seize the moment and get involved. And the way that I did that was by offering some classes on sustainable farming. And we're in our 8th year this coming fall offering those classes. And it's actually a series of 2 classes. It's a little plug here, but there are flyers out on the table in the foyer for the classes that start in September. And the first class in the fall is an overview course on small acreage farming, and it really would cover all the subjects there are. But the real point of even bringing that up is that's where I became acquainted with who was farming in Kitsap County, and that's the point I wanted to make. And much to my delight, really not to my surprise, but I really didn't know what I would find. In the course of the last 7, almost 8 years, I've had the good fortune of working with a number, it's approximately 400 people that have taken the classes. Yes, in some cases it's a family, or partners that come in and take the class together, so I count all the noses, but they're all learners, and that's what's really important. And I'm really big on what these students want to do, because the class is 12 weeks long, and then if they take the second class, they've spent 24 weeks, or once a week for 24 weeks. That's quite a commitment in the course of our busy lives to do that. But I see the optimism in their eyes, the interest in their eyes. And I guess one of the points that I would want to make that really fits really well with and some of you in the room, I recognize faces, the passion to be producers of food in the county is that you come to understand how important light, moisture, and nutrients are. If you have those, you can raise livestock, poultry, or crops virtually anywhere. If you have light, moisture, and nutrients, I mean, those are the things. That's what it takes. And everyone works on that, on making their farm the best that they possibly can, and keep those things in the proper balance to grow the crops of livestock that they want to produce. The last thought I guess I'd leave you with is that a lot of people worry about or think about, or scrutinize, the merits of farming. Is it viable today? Is it economically viable? Well, I'm not an ag economist, and I'll try to pass myself off as one, but one of the things I've realized over the course of my career as an educator is that a lot of people make life choices. And a lot of the people who I've met and worked with and continue to work with who are farming, they choose to own a piece of land, and they choose to grow a crop. And they could choose to do other things with their time, their energy, and their resources. But they choose to farm. And it doesn't fit a real good economic model sometimes when you look at the value of land and the amount of toil, amount of labor inputs that there are. But I feel blessed to be able to get to know and work with people who have that kind of food production ethic. It's just absolutely incredible. And there have always been people like that, and I believe there will always be people like that want to own a piece of ground and produce food. Pass it up.
Pass the hat? Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Jim.
All right, yes. Hello, everybody. I'm Jim Freeman. Hello. I'm a member of the Kitsap Community and Agricultural Alliance. A lot of you are used to coming to second Tuesdays to our meetings every month. Lately, we've been meeting up the Silverdale Grange. But we used to meet here quite often. We were here for a couple of years. Our organization, which started in 2007, has over 400 members and about 1,400 people who we interact with or communicate with. And I'd like to point out that just about everybody but one on the panel up here is a member of the KCAA. happy to report that. And what we're about is we like to say that we're building a local food network. And what do we mean by that? Well, Arno has a lot more statistics and is a much bigger expert than I am on the numbers, but my research indicates that there are several hundred farmers in the county. There may be as many as a couple thousand. And all of the 250,000 people that live in the county buy or consume perhaps up to $1 billion a year in food and beverages. That's a pretty big number. But way less than 1% of that total dollar volume comes into our local pockets, into our local farmers' hands. And I suppose if we had a measurable result for the KCAA, that's what we want to try to do. We want to try to increase the market share of dollars that are passing out of consumers' hands into farmers' hands and do that locally. So how does KCAA do that? Well, we're an all-volunteer organization. We're supported by our members. We have in the past been supported by grants from Kitsap County. But we look to try to, I suppose the way I would put it is we're trying to introduce people to one another. And so we do that by telling stories, the stories of farmers, the stories of businesses in the county. We have a blog, a lot of you are familiar with it. It's called buylocalfoodandkitsap.org. And Sue Edwards, who is a past associate of the Kitsap Sun, a journalist, has been going around for us and going out to farms and businesses and interviewing people and writing their stories and helping people understand their struggle, their triumphs, and why they're farmers and why they're here doing what they do for us all. So we have monthly meetings. In meetings like this, we have sometimes people come in and provide education for farmers. Last month, we had Sharon Exley from USDA Rural Development come in and talk about how farmers can access grants and loans for their farm programs. We have some of those brochures in the back of the hall back here, so there's some farmers here tonight that missed that meeting and want to get that information that's available. We also promote what are called CSAs. I think hopefully just about everybody here in the room is familiar with what a CSA is, but it stands for Community Supported Agriculture, and it's a new way that consumers can connect with farmers and buy farm fresh produce in shares from the farmers directly once a week for the seasons that are operated. We're called an alliance because we also work to support other organizations. We've got some fine organizations up here tonight you're going to hear from. We last year had our sort of big public event that we called the Local Food Chef Show Off. It was a harvest meal, and a lot of you, but a total of about 400 people showed up that night to eat some really fine food and beverages that were 95% of which were produced locally in Kitsap County and prepared by 13 chefs and restaurants. We're also involved in things like farmland preservation. Some of our board members and our members are actively engaged in trying to preserve a legacy farm, a very important farm here in Kitsap County. It was owned formerly by Gerald Peterson, and the estate is now working with those folks to try to preserve 160 acres of farmland for animals and for food production. Many of you may see it as you drive by Silverdale. It's on the east side of the freeway, just north of Silverdale. And this is a critically important thing because perhaps Arnold could fill us in on that too, but we're losing farmland every year. And we'd like to try to put a stop to that and try to repopulate the rural areas with farmers who are passionate about farming and are passionate about local food. And the one thing we've started lately, maybe some of you are familiar with, we started a radio program. It's every Saturday from noon to 1. It's called the Buy Local Radio Hour. And it's on KITZ 1400 AM, or it's on live streaming on our website at buylocalradio.org. I encourage you to listen to it, and I encourage people who are interested in the program to step up. Maybe you can do that tonight. Let me know if you're interested. We do interviews on the program. We interview farmers, we interview businesses, farmers market managers. We've been to the Harbor Fair and the Port Orchard Farmers Market, among others. But we also bring another form of local food, which I think is really important to understand, and that's our cultural heritage and some of our cultural riches that we have here in the county. We bring musicians, storytellers, actors, actresses, people who are engaged in bringing a unique cultural identity and whose stories I know you'd like to hear. So anybody that has any suggestions for that, I'll be happy to take them. And finally, at every KCAA meeting, I like to point out our membership brochure. In the back of the hall back there, we have these little trifold pamphlets. If you're not a member already, I'd encourage you to take a look at that brochure. It's $20 a year for an individual membership, and that $20 goes a long way to help supporting your local food and your local farmers. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Sally Marin, and I'm on the board of Sustainable Bainbridge, and Sound Food is our local food arm. 4 years ago, when we started Sustainable Bainbridge, it was in an effort to build a more resilient community, a community that was more tied together to itself and to the region. And there, in sustainability terms, it's kind of a buzzword now, but in sustainability terms, there are sort of three legs, and one is economic, one is social, and one is environmental. And one of the first things we thought about was that, you know, that food is a place that addresses all three of those legs of the sustainability stool. It's also the one thing that everybody shares. It's the place we can come together at the table, that we can sort of reach out and make connections around food. So one of the first things we did was to say, well, okay, we want to begin to eat more locally. We would like to grow that part of the community. How do we go about doing that? And so we did some research. We put together a Google-based online map just to begin to identify the farms and to begin to tell people, you know, how do you? If I want to eat local now, how do I get there? And then the next step was, well, gosh, you know, who's going to know about this map? So then we thought, well, we started an e-newsletter, and we picked a name. We ran through a lot of names about, you know, to try and describe what we were doing. And we settled on Sound Food because we thought it had a lot of layers, and we also thought it was an inclusive sort of name that spoke about the importance of relationships within the entire region. So we started, we set up a website, a soundfood.org website, started an e-news, launched it with a tasting event at Islandwood with local nettles in March, because that was about the only thing locally growing at that point. It was quite successful. People were really excited, so we thought, well, now we really know that we have something that, you know, we can bring people together. If they'll come for nettle pasta, we're pretty sure they'll get together and be connected. So since that time, what we've done is we've tried to identify the elements of what, you'll hear a lot about local food systems and local networks, so we'll try not to be redundant here. But you know, if you begin to think about what a local food network looks like, I mean, they're really about 5 elements. It's production, it's processing, it's distribution, it's consumption, then it's compost or waste that goes right back into production. So that's the way we've looked at the way a local food system would work. And our goal has been to try to identify things in each one of those areas that we can support, encourage, make connections. So in production, it's not only identifying the local farms and the farmers and letting people know how they can get, you know, with CSAs and other sort of vehicles. But to encourage, we also started a little community gardening map to try and connect people who wanted to grow their own food with those who had some land and couldn't, you know, and were happy to let somebody else use it. So because we think in terms of production, it has to be the whole, I mean, it has to be people growing their own food in their own backyard, it has to be community gardens. We actually did the public produce planting at City Hall, which was an attempt to say, well, you know, there's a lot of public land out there, and instead of just having ornamentals or weeds, we could have fruit trees, blueberry bushes, and produce, and it would be free to anybody who wanted to pick it. You know, it's a way to say that fresh, good food should be for everyone, not just for a certain number of elite people who could afford, you know, high-end produce. If it doesn't work for everyone, if it doesn't benefit everyone, if it doesn't feed the entire community, then it really doesn't do what it should. It doesn't bring everyone to the table. So we've also, in terms of processing, we're not quite there on processing. We'd love to see a regional, some kind of regional processing place. You we've had a number of ideas, but, that's really going to be a bigger effort. There's lots of small commercial kitchens in private homes and places like that. But it would be, it would be something that the whole county could work together on to take that step. We set up the Ferry Farm stand to try and show on Bainbridge, at the Bainbridge terminal. And this will be the third year we'll do it. Farmers were they weren't quite sure how this would work, but the Wednesday Farmers Market hadn't worked on Bainbridge. And so we thought, well, people won't come to the farmers market, let's take the farmers market to the people. So everything has to be bagged in $5 bags so that when you're running to the bus, that you have, you can just grab it and go and throw down your $5. And it's worked really well. The farmers are pleased, the commuters are pleased. It's been a lively addition to the ferry terminal. And then in terms of, consumption, a lot of it has been sort of educating people about what's fresh, what's seasonal, how do you eat? And that's been the focus of the e-newsletter, focus on the website. We have a lot of recipes and sort of ways to use what's in season now. And then waste, we actually just made a connection with somebody who's starting a worm business on the island, so we're pretty excited about that, to set up a worm business on public land so that the compost, the food waste, everything that goes into it can return back to the soil without having to be trucked a long way away. So that's pretty much what we're about, and I guess I'll turn it over to you now.
Thank you. Well, I want to say, first of all, thank you to David for putting this together, and thank you for everybody for showing up. This is a great group of people. I didn't know exactly what to expect, and I'm thrilled by how many people have showed up and the panelists that I get to sit next to. I'm Alex Moore. I'm from Cascade Harvest Coalition, and we are a Seattle-based nonprofit that serves Washington State. We're a local food and farming resource center. We support small and mid-sized growers and attempt to educate consumers about how to get access to local food, locally produced food and beverages. The way that we do that is through consumer education, farmer support, and network building. Some of the programs you might have heard of are Puget Sound Fresh, which is a program that is funded in part by King County, but it is for all 12 Puget Sound counties. There's some farm guides out front as you walked in. Kitsap County is well represented in there. And it is a basic resource that's free. We pass it out to 100,000 Puget Sound consumers each year. And it's a listing of all the farmers and farmers markets who choose to participate in those 12 counties. We also have a CSA directory that we publish each year. This year we published it online at PugetSoundFresh.org, Community Supported Agriculture Directory. And we do farm-to-table workshops all over the state each year. That's a WSDA-funded program. And these are really networking meetings where we bring buyers and producers together in the same room, along with other members of the supply chain, distributors, processors, some of the folks that Sally was just talking about, into the same room for panel discussions as well as facilitated networking. And then we're pleased, we're ecstatic that this is our fourth year doing these. We measure the results and we find that just by getting people in the same room like you are here tonight, amazing things can happen. And we see hundreds of thousands of dollars in activity for each one of those workshops in new economic activity. We also do some policy work at the statewide level, which I am less involved with, and honestly I'm going to stumble through tonight if we start talking about it, but I know that we've done some important policy work as well. I don't know how many minutes I'm at now. I don't want to overstep, but I want to talk to you really quickly about some of the trends that we're seeing. We're seeing a rise in obesity at the nationwide level, average age of farmers increasing, decreasing acreage in the state of Washington, even though we're getting more farms. The farms are becoming smaller farms. We're seeing an increase in food deserts. You talked about access to food being a problem. And we're seeing carbon intensity go up on farms. So I think we're all here to try to shorten that distance between the business transaction. between the producer and the consumer, between the farmer and the consumer, between the consumer and ultimately the soil. And I loved, Jim, that you were focusing on bringing back cultural heritage to farming too. I think that as the average community member, I know I certainly have lost a lot of touch with soil, and I think it's important that we understand where our food comes from and who is growing it. We focus across, as I said, the entire supply chain of not only producers, but we recognize that if producers are very strong and they are great producers and they can bring quality product to market, if the market's not there, if the market's not developed, then they're still out on an island. So we really focus on building an entire food system perspective. And if you look at small and mid-size food and beverage businesses, they're pretty much sharing the same barriers, which are access to education, access to network or community, and access to capital. And I think I'll leave it there because I find myself droning on now. But again, I'm thrilled to be here. I'm excited to see what happens on the panel here, and thank you for inviting me.
Well, good evening. It's great to see so many people here. Thank you to the Sun, thank you to Kitsap Regional Library, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight. It's pretty impressive looking group of folks out there, and pretty impressive looking panelists that I'm sharing the dais with. But I also know that many of you out there could probably deliver just as many wise words as those of us who are up here. So it's pretty important for us to be able to hear some of your questions and some of your comments. I am Charlotte Garrido. I'm a Kitsap County Commissioner, but I'm also a longtime farmer here in Kitsap County. My husband and I have some acreage in South Kitsap and have some geriatric sheep now after many, many years of farming. Some of our sheep are aging as well. And a horse and some chickens and a big garden and so on and so forth. And I've been really active in Kitsap County community for many, many years in relationship to how we use our land and especially in the farming community. I was one of the co-founders of the Kitsap Farmers Market Association and back in like 1978. And I helped farm, I actually sold at the farmers market for years here as well as Pike Place Market because I did some spinning and weaving, and helped form a fiber arts cooperative in Paulsbo many years ago that was here for quite a few years. And I remember the old group that we worked with when we were dreaming up the Farmers Market Association called the Rural Development Committee. And it was a bunch of salty critters and me. And we did some really good thinking and some remembering of times past and figuring out how we could be responsible stewards moving forward. It's sort of evaporated now. It disappeared probably 15 years ago. I haven't seen much. Is it?
Pretty much, yes.
Yeah.
They still exist in places around the state, but not many.
So I bring the perspective as a policymaker that I want to know that I am representing people who live in the community and what are some of our human needs. Well, I'm responsible as a person who's governing to provide for the health and welfare of the citizens of Kitsap. And what more basic human need is there? I mean, there are several human needs, but health and food is a really important human need. And public policy does not tend to deal with food and the need for every citizen who lives here to have access to fresh, decent supplies of good food. And so when the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act was enacted about a year and a half ago, the stimulus money became available. There were two major purposes for that money. The one was to create green jobs, but the second was to create relationships that never had existed before to get things done. And I thought about, so what could we do in Kitsap? We've really got to put some of that money, we've got to invest in this community, and what can we do with that money? Well, it seemed to me that somehow looking around at all of the producers in the community and those of us who wanted to have better access to fresh food, there must be a match there. So it took about a year of meetings with lots of different folks within Kitsap County to talk about what the possibilities were, to come up with the idea of a project we called the food chain. And that really does look at the whole system of food, you know, because you have growers and we need more growers, but you also need to make that connection to how to distribute the food to everybody who eats, that wants access to the food, to make sure that there are processing capacities. I mean, I'm reiterating what Sally already said and Alex said. So that you want to do the production, the consumption, the processing, the let me think here, the recycling of waste, and make sure that all of those are tended to within this whole cycle, and making sure that consumers have good access. So. You know, I build partnerships. I don't do it all by myself, but thank you for asking outright. And I think that it was really important to make sure that we had an ongoing partnership. And so what better way to do that than to invite people who are involved in community food production or distribution. We decided the Board of Commissioners established a Food and Farm Policy Council to help us advocate for more access to food, to coordinate some of the various sectors in the food chain, and to provide information to the community about how better to meet the gaps that exist. And we appointed people from food production, food distribution, and we also looked at the idea of sustainability. So there's a person who represents sustainability, one who represents buying locally, and we have not yet found a good nonprofit. We wanted to do appoint somebody from food banks because we felt like that really gave us a solid vision of where some of the access, the equity access to various diverse parts of the population are. I actually have seen that there are several Food Policy Council members here, and I'd like to ask them to stand so that you know that some of the folks that represent you. Would you please stand now? Thank you.
Good.
Yes. So, I could go on, but I expect that there are going to be some really good questions. We do have some subcommittees established, and I think that the council members would like to talk after the formal parts of the presentation. They'd probably be just as available to you. Some of the policy aspects that we will be looking at, and the subcommittee on policy has also already begun to look at land use laws and rights to farm and water rights kinds of issues. But there are some health issues, some policy issues, some food processing kinds of issues that might need some policy attention, as well as the access to public lands, more investment in the ability to have lands available to farm, even recognizing more overtly some of the urban land opportunities that Bremerton and Bainbridge I see some really good, fine examples of. But also, we do have Howe Farm and other public parcels that would probably be ideal ways for us to use those properties in a way that they've been used before, and we could encourage reinvestment in those kinds of uses. So I'll let Nikki talk a little bit now, and look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I want to say thank you to the Kitsap Regional Library and to Mr. Nelson and the Kitsap Sun for sponsoring this. This kind of a thing is, in my mind, a very much needed thing, and obvious to me since I've read, I have to say it, comments on the articles that were written in preparation for this, that there seems to be, in my mind, much more communication needed in our in our community about agriculture and what it is and what it can be. I'm Nikki Johansson. My husband Alan and I operate Pheasant Field Farm in Silverdale, and it was about a little bit more than 10 years ago that we decided to go the route that we're on today. It's been a real learning experience. I thought I knew a lot about farming. There was an area that needed more information, networked, went to other counties, came home here to Kitsap, and we had WSU offering their courses. Highly recommend them. In fact, anybody that's thinking of small business would benefit from the type of material that's taught in that class, because it really sets the table to get you on the right track. Very beneficial. A lot of things here are already said. Farmer from way back, grew up an egg farm, didn't ever anticipate to be back there again. Went through an era where farming wasn't that of a respectable type of thing to be in. I'm very proud to be a farmer. I'm very proud to know other farmers. I'm really proud to see the amount of people here tonight. I'm glad to see a lot of faces that are our customers at farmers markets. We sell at 4 different farmers markets right now, and had the pleasure of having the opportunity to participate in the formation of the Paulsbo market, which we are very pleased with the success of that market, and other markets can build to be what that market is too. So you know, through the years, really got the message from the public that there was an increase for local food, demanding local food. I'm just, others have heard me say this kind of thing before, but I'm just a little person, and I knew that the amount of calls that I was getting, we were really into something. Then comes along Michael Pollan, Barbara Kingsolver, and of course Joel Salatin to promote more about the advantage of eating local food. So much information. It's really, it has our public attuned to what healthy eating is all about and why they need to be seeking local food. I'm not going to talk a real long time here, but I'd like to say what I'm about today is growing more farmers. We need to encourage young people and middle-aged people, anybody, to get into growing food. Even if you're growing the scale just to feed yourself, it's important to know how to grow food. But there's been a lot of land lost to development in Kitsap County, but there's still a lot more land out there. We need to be opening doors for opportunities for young people to engage in agricultural activities. We need to expand the opportunities for added value products and a myriad of things. It's an exciting time to be involved in this, and I see the critical element is networking and partnerships, particularly with our government. I know you can't do this on your own. I ran into some roadblocks early on, and it's important to get your message out to your elected officials. Seek the help of WSU. Seek the help of KCAA. Of course, I'm part of KCAA too, but there's things there to help you, and that networking is really vital. Thank you very much.